Are you looking for ways to strengthen your marriage? Would you like to raise children you enjoy being around? Do you long for a peaceful, orderly home that's a blessing to everyone who comes through its doors? Then you've come to the right place. I'm Jennifer Flanders, a Bible-believing, homeschooling mother to 12 and host of the Loving Life at Home podcast. Join me as we discover what God's Word has to say about marriage, motherhood, and minding the things that matter most. Hello, friend. Welcome to episode 97 of Loving Life at Home. This week, I've been cleaning out my inbox and answering some of the questions my blog readers, podcast listeners, and or newsletter subscribers have sent in. I was planning to call this episode Mailbox Monday, but I am late on posting it, so I had to change the title. I guess I could have called it Trying to Tidy Up My Inbox Tuesday or Wish I Were More on Top of Things Wednesday, but the point is, even after moving all the unsolicited email advertisements and other spam to the trash, I still have a lot of bona fide messages in my inbox awaiting a response. Questions that need answering, topic suggestions for podcasts or posts, reader requests that I want to work on. So I decided to knock out a bunch of them all at once today. In this episode, I'm going to tackle questions such as, is it safe for most women to have 10 or more babies? What math books are best for teaching homeschool students? Can I use your prayer guides if I live in another country? Could you please publish a new Pledge of Allegiance? What books would you recommend for boys to read? And what should I do when other people's kids misbehave in my home? So if you find any of those topics of interest, keep listening while I delve in. My first letter poses this question: is giving birth multiple times safe for healthy women? Adam writes in response to my episode on the benefits of big family living, which I'll link in today's show notes. Hi, thank you for sharing your experience. I am a man, but I want to know, is it safe for most healthy women to have over 10 children? Is having big families not for all healthy women? I heard pregnancies change many things about the bodies of women. God bless your family. Thanks. My answer to him is every woman is different. Yes, pregnancy definitely changes many things about a woman's body. I can't speak for all women or even for all healthy women, but I'm happy to share what I've observed through the years. And that's the fact that some women's bodies seem to bounce right back to normal almost immediately after having a baby. Others, not so much. That's even true of the same woman with different pregnancies. It was certainly true for me. The baby weight simply melted away without any extra effort on my part after those first few deliveries, but it stubbornly clung to my hips and midsection for decades after my last few babies. Additionally, some women, whether they're generally healthy or obviously out of shape, have such easy pregnancies and smooth deliveries that they would gladly consider having 10 or more children. That's the group I found myself in. Other women, including some who were in tip-top health to begin with, endure such difficult pregnancies and traumatic deliveries that they will probably have to think twice before signing up to go through the same ordeal a second or third, much less a 10th or 12th time. Of course, generally speaking, women have been successfully having babies for all of human history, yet pregnancy and childbirth are not without risk. Between 700 and 800 women die in the U.S. each year due to maternal causes during pregnancy or through 6 weeks postpartum. Though the risk of death is relatively low, far more women die in car accidents each year, for instance, it isn't zero. That's why it's so important for a couple to discuss this topic frankly and prayerfully in order to arrive at a joint decision regarding family size while still recognizing that it's God who opens and closes the womb. You need to know that even if you both decide you want a double handful of children, that doesn't automatically mean you'll have them. Likewise, if you decide to limit yourself to having just 1 or 2 babies or even 0, God can certainly overrule that decision as well by sending you 2 or 3 at the same time, or by blessing you with a pregnancy even when you were doing everything within your power to prevent it. I'm not sure what prompted this question from this listener. Maybe he isn't even married yet, but is simply curious about what caring for a wife and children might someday entail. Or maybe he is married and he's trying to convince a reluctant wife to have more children. Either way, I'm pretty certain the average woman wouldn't want her husband or potential husband to pressure her to keep popping out babies just because some stranger on the internet told him it was safe to do so. The desire for a large family should ideally come from God, as He is the one to whom you both must look to sustain you when the going gets tough, which it inevitably will from time to time, regardless of how many children you ultimately have or don't have. The next question is admittedly niche. Sherry writes, what curriculum do you use to teach algebra? I run a cottage school, and we're having a hard time finding a curriculum that works. I would love to know what your co-op has used. Thanks, Sherry. Well, that all depends on how much time you have to devote to teaching. My very favorite math curriculum, and what I've always used with my own children and still do, is Saxon Math, at least for grades 4 and up. Saxon didn't have a curriculum for K through 3 back when we first started homeschooling, so I had to find something else for the younger grades. My favorite for those early years is Horizons workbooks, and I've stuck with those until my kids are ready for Saxon 5-4. Even after Saxon came out with a curriculum for grades K through 3, I really preferred Horizons for that part, but we switched to Saxon at 5-4 and keep on going after that. In the pro column for Saxon, it is one very straightforward. I can teach the material cover to cover, and with the exception of fractional parts equations, Saxon explains everything exactly as I would explain it myself. So it's intuitive for me as a teacher to use that curriculum. Also, number 2, the books are non-consumable, which I like. I've been able to use those same textbooks for all 12 of my children and several of my grandchildren now as well. Number 3, it teaches to mastery. Once most of my kids finish Algebra 2, they've been ready and able to CLEP out of college algebra. Ditto for passing the pre-calculus CLEP after finishing Saxon Advanced Math. And those of my children who went all the way through Saxon Calculus with me at home earned college credit for calculus through CLEP exams as well. The fourth thing in Saxon's pro column is something some students want to put in the con column, and that's the fact that Saxon has a lot of review in every homework set. It adds up to about 20 to 30 questions a day, which to some kids seems excessive, but I'm of the opinion that if you understand the concepts, it's not going to take you very long to do all that review. You can finish it pretty fast. And if you don't understand those concepts, then you really need the extra practice. However, I also teach Algebra 1 and 2 at my homeschool co-op, and I've done so for many years. And Saxon wouldn't really work very well for a class that meets only once a week, which in such a setting would be another con for Saxon. So I use Matthew C. to teach my co-op kids. The pro of this curriculum is that it introduces only one new concept a week, followed by 5 homework problem sets and a test. That's perfect for a co-op. I cover the topic on Monday, and then the students do a worksheet on that topic each day of the week and take a test over the weekend before moving on to a new topic the following week with me. The con is that the student workbook has no instruction in it. So if a student misses class, he can't really just read over the concepts on his own unless his family also buys the textbook or invests in the DVDs of Steve Demme teaching each lesson, which I also think are pretty good. Also, Matthew C. Algebra 2 includes a few geometry problems on every test, despite the fact that no geometry is ever explained in the textbook or taught in class or reviewed in the homework assignments for that particular course. And my students who have not yet taken geometry are sometimes clueless as to how to solve those problems. My solution is that I just count all those as extra credit. Students who solve them correctly get extra points added to their test grade, but students who miss them don't lose any points for not knowing how to work them. Now, for some reason, the leadership at my co-op decided to switch math curriculum a few years ago and went with Alpha Omega Life Packs. I've used Life Packs to teach physical science before at home, and I thought they were okay, but it was extremely stressful trying to adapt Alpha Omega's algebra curriculum for my co-op classes. And I absolutely dreaded teaching that curriculum that semester. Despite the fact that I've always loved algebra, really math in general, enough to major in math in college and do a couple of years of graduate work in the same field. The pro for Alpha Omega is the workbooks do contain some instruction and examples, so students who miss class can review the material on their own. The cons is the course is meant to be used with video instruction, so there's not really a good teacher's guide with well laid out lesson plans available for there wasn't for me to use in class. Also, the homework was insane, as many as 450 problems per week, and much of that was busy work with vague explanations of what the students were expected to do. Plus, they had questions like, make up a problem about such and such, then solve it on your own. And those kind of problems have non-discrete answers, which are a nightmare to grade when I have 9 or 10 students turning in nearly 500 problems each. There was simply no way I could check that amount of homework with any degree of thoroughness in the couple of hours I had access to students' completed assignments each week. In the end, we didn't even make it 6 weeks before we abandoned that curriculum and went back to Matthew C. In fact, one of the leaders in our homeschool co-op, not the one who chose the new curriculum, but somebody else, later confided to me that the Alpha Omega Life Packs were what convinced her mother to homeschool in the first place. The small private school in which she'd enrolled her oldest daughters had used life packs, and the curriculum was giving her little girl fits as well. So she eventually decided she could do a better job educating them at home with a different curriculum, so that's what she did. Of course, this might be great for a homeschool curriculum with just one student and mom going through the curriculum itself, but for the co-op, it was not a good fit at all. Then my next question comes from a subscriber named Mary Alice. She writes, Dear Jennifer, I so enjoy your emails and podcast, even at my age, 83. Thank you for working so hard to plant values in the younger generation of women. When I read that there is a day in September to honor the Pledge of Allegiance to our country, I'm wondering if you have or would be willing to compose a Pledge of Allegiance to our Creator God, who blesses us so abundantly. Thank you for giving thought to that. Blessings in your ministry for the Lord and women. Mary Alice. Well, I thought that was really a sweet idea. And of course, I was happy to fulfill that simple request. Our homeschool group pledges allegiance to the American flag and to the Bible every Monday morning, but I've never encountered a pledge to the Creator before, so I wrote one myself. It goes like this. I pledge allegiance to the Lord, Creator of heaven and earth, and to my Savior, Jesus Christ, who died for my sins, then rose again to the praise and glory of God. I designed a pretty printable version as well, which I'll link in today's show notes, along with the pledge to the Bible and the pledge to the U.S. flag, in case you might be interested in any or all three of those. My next question is from a reader in South Africa. He writes, Good day. I was looking at your prayer for police. Are you from America? And is the symbol for police also for America, or can it be used all over the world? I am from South Africa. Now, the symbol he's referring to is just some blackline clip art that I used at the top of this particular printable, which I'll link in today's show notes. And I'll also include a link to a new prayer guide for the military, which is another related reader request I recently fulfilled. My answer to the international reader is that, as far as I know, police badges differ from city to city and state to state. The symbol I used is not official. It was only meant to be a generic representation of law and order. I don't see any problem for people to use that symbol or to pray that prayer for officers in other parts of the world, because police need divine strength and protection no matter where they serve. My next question is about books. A subscriber named Carol writes, Do you have a must-read book list for high school boys before graduating? If so, please share. My answer is no, I don't presently have any such post on the blog, but I should, and I think that's a great idea. Off the top of my head, I think such a list would include The Men We Need by Brant Hansen, Do Hard Things by Alex and Brett Harris, Created for Work by Bob Schultz. That sadly is out of print, but my son really enjoyed that when he was in high school or junior high, and I think that it would be worth trying to track down a copy. Thoughts for Young Men by J.C. Ryle, biographies of George Mueller and Brother Andrew. We have a whole set of missionary biographies that are published by YWAM, I think. I'll link some of those in the show notes too. Also, More Than Meets the Eye by Richard Swenson. That was real key for our family. Then all those are nonfiction. As for fiction, I'd also include The Iron Ring and The First Two Lives of Lucas Kasha, both by Lloyd Alexander, as well as The Chronicles of Prydain, which are also by Lloyd Alexander. Then J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis, especially The Horse and His Boy, and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and Prince Caspian, and The Magician's Nephew and The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Really, all of those are great. Also, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I think that's worth the read. Where the Red Fern Grows by Wilson Rawls. That's one of our family favorites. A Wonder, and also White Bird by R.J. Palacio. Carry On, Mr. Bowditch by Jean Lee Latham. And then Mark Corman has a couple out that I'd recommend. Really, I enjoy a lot of his books, but Restart and Schooled, both I think would be on that list for young men. A Single Shard by Linda Sue Park. We really liked that one too. And Old Yeller by Fred Gibson. All of these really... Oh, did I say Little Britches? That should be on there too. Little Britches by Ralph Moody and The Man of the Family. He has a whole set, but I'd especially read those first two. All of these really, the fiction really have characters that have qualities that we wanted our boys to adopt and emulate. So that's why they would be on my list. There are probably some more books that I'm missing. If you're listening and can think of any that you think need to be there, drop me a line and let me know. I'll do my best to expand upon that list and turn it into a post eventually. Thanks for the inspiration to do that to Carol, who asked the question. The next question was about books also. Melanie writes, "Hi, Jennifer. I don't know if your emails are designed to be answered, but I'm assuming since, quote, friends told you about the broken links, that you'll see this reply. I'm wondering about the book, The Men We Need. Do you think it would be appropriate for a preteen?" Melanie. My answer to both questions is yes. Yes, my newsletters are designed to be answered, so you can just hit reply anytime you have something to say to me if you're a subscriber, and I'll include a subscription link in today's show notes in case you want to be on that list. And then, yes, also, I think The Men We Need could safely be read by a preteen. I don't remember anything that would be objectionable for younger kids to read in Hanson's book, although I wasn't specifically looking at it through that lens. I think my youngest sons were 14 and 17 when we first read it, and my daughter was 12. You might consider reading the book aloud to your preteen so that you can discuss it as you go. It's simultaneously funny and sobering. Let me know what you think if you end up reading it or listening to the audiobook together. Then my last question is from a reader who writes, "One question that I've struggled with for years, and so I'm reaching out to you for mentoring, is how to deal with other people's children who are permitted to run wild in my home by their own parents. I just had this happen last week, and I feel like when these families come over, their children burst through the doors like a hurricane, and the parents just watch and say nothing. There are no boundaries, and some moms just credit their children's behavior to curiosity. It feels so awkward to me to say something right then and there, but as an older woman now who did not permit her children to act that way, I feel the need to and should say something. I feel very uncomfortable and like the parents do not respect the privacy and sanctity of our home when they allow their children to act that way. Even as I see this happening, however, I struggle so much to confront it in the moment because I do not want to embarrass the parents or make them feel bad. I just don't know what to say, and I get so frustrated and angry with myself more than anything. As my husband and I were raising our 3 children, we wanted people to be happy to see us coming, not happy to see us going, and yet that is honestly how I feel when families like these come to our home. And they're Christian families, not unbelievers. When our children were little, I gleaned a lot of wisdom from older parents in our church who were a few steps ahead of us, as well as from solid biblical authors on raising children. We did not believe in child-proofing our home because the world is not child-proofed. By teaching our children what no meant at home, I was able to go to a store or someone else's unbaby-proofed home or office, and I did not have to worry about my children being out of control, breaking something, or embarrassing me. I truly wanted our children to be a blessing wherever we went. As Proverbs 29:17 says, "Discipline your son, and he will give you rest. He will give delight to your heart." These children feel very much out of control, and while I want to practice hospitality, boundaries are necessary because, quote, curiosity can be very costly and even dangerous with boundaries. Thank you for taking my question and listening. I was wrestling with this so much today, and then I saw your newsletter pop into my email, and so I thought, I'm going to ask Jennifer what I should do. Well, my answer to this particular reader is to proceed with caution. She's not the only mom to write me about this problem. I've heard from enough others to know that what she describes is a common occurrence. So what can we do about it? It's a tough question and something I've had to deal with from time to time myself. If the misbehaving kids are unlikely to ever come again, or maybe only once every year or two, I normally try to my best to ignore the behavior. I don't know that that's really the best course of action, but it seems the most pragmatic to me. If, on the other hand, the children in question are regular guests, maybe they belong to members of a small group that meets weekly in your house, or they're neighbors who frequently drop in for a visit, or even grandkids whose parents don't always enforce the house rules as consistently as you'd like, then we've got to come up with a game plan that allows us to firmly but lovingly guide our youngest guest into adopting a higher standard of behavior than may be normally required of them. And it will help if everybody living in your house is on the same page. So explain expectations beforehand and enlist the help of your spouse and older children to enforce these rules, any older children that are still living in your home. Insist that visiting children stay in public areas where you can keep an eye on them at all times. We don't usually let our grandkids or young guests go back to the bedrooms for unsupervised play. Bedrooms are really just for sleeping at our house, and they have things in them that could be damaged or destroyed very easily. So we try to keep all the kids and the toys and the play in the common areas, the living room, the dining room, the kitchen table, that sort of thing, when we have young guests at our house. Anticipate short attention spans and curiosity, and provide coloring pages or building blocks or puzzles to entertain them while they're in your home. If they get bored with one toy, have them pick that one up and put it away before providing another. Speak directly to the children with a warm smile and an extra measure of patience. Don't treat their curiosity as a failure on their parents' part to train them, but assume the role of a teacher and encourage her yourself as you sweetly explain the rules that they need to follow at your house. In my experience, parents will usually see this interaction and back you up. If they don't, or if the children are rude or disrespectful, you may have to have the offending children sit out until they can do better. If the children are left in your care and the parents are gone, it's a bit easier to navigate than when the parents are right in the next room. I remember when my oldest grandkids were all little, they'd often stay with me while their mother ran errands. And inevitably, when my daughter-in-law came back to get them, she'd always act surprised that my house still looked clean and the kids were all playing quietly, even if they'd been there all day, including for a couple of meals. But that's just because I enforced the same rules with them that I had for my own kids growing up. Namely, we cleaned up messes as we went along, with everyone pitching in to help. We'd all work together to get the kitchen cleaned up after meals, and we'd put one toy up before getting another out. If, for instance, they got tired of playing with Lincoln Logs, we'd pick all those up and put them away before getting out the box of Duplos or matchbook cars or dinosaurs or whatever. I have a post called Taming the Toy Box that explains our method in more detail. I'll link that in the show notes, as well as a free printable chart of age-appropriate chores for children in case you need a little inspiration in that area. As for correcting other people's errant children, I would also recommend praying about that situation. That's always the best place to start. God promises in James 1:5 that he will give wisdom to all who asks, and he will undoubtedly help you in this sticky situation as well. In my experience, unless you are really very, very close, confronting parents directly about their children's wild behavior rarely goes over well. That doesn't mean you shouldn't ever do it, but just anticipate that it's going to change the relationship most likely, because it's hard to do it without coming across as overly judgmental or self-righteous. And anybody who's raised as many children as I have knows that young kids are full of surprises and they don't always behave as parents hope, even when those same parents work consistently at training them to do better. I don't think I've ever had a guest in my home do anything so outrageous that one of my own children hadn't tried something equally as shocking first at some point in their life. In fact, just last week, one of my youngest little grandkids snuck off unnoticed to a bathroom in the back of our house and opened a drawer of my closet desk, pulled out 2 or 3 sets of calligraphy markers and several bottles of glue and dropped them all one by one into our toilet. When his mother found out, she seemed mortified, but I well remember when my own own daughter, who incidentally just turned 26 yesterday, did the same thing as a toddler, only she flushed the evidence. And I had to call the plumber 3 days in a row before he finally pulled the toilet and realized the U-trap was filled with a matrix of markers all jammed together like so many pixie sticks, so that the water and even a little toilet paper could easily flush right through, but nothing solid could go down. At least when little Lukey did the same thing, the water was clean and he wasn't able to reach those buttons on top of my toilet to flush all the craft supplies, so it was an easy matter just to fish everything back out of the bowl, dry it off, and put it away. The point is, kids will be kids, but they do need guidance. Perhaps the mom who's sitting on your couch letting her kids run wild like a hurricane is feeling overwhelmed or at a loss as to how to even start to rein them back in. So you do your best to graciously redirect them. Read them a story, serve them a snack, give them some blocks to play with on the floor by your feet. If they're older, put them to work by hiring them to pick up pine cones or rake the leaves in your yard or pull weeds, and keep them busy that way. Be gracious and loving, but also firm about enforcing the rules. Their mom is sure to take notice, and she may even learn a few strategies to try out herself at home. Thanks so much for listening today. If you have a question you'd like to hear covered on this podcast, message me on Instagram at Flanders_family or contact me through my website, lovinglifeathome.com. Before you go, if you've been encouraged by something you've heard on the show, do me a favor and forward the link to a friend, or head over to Loving Life at Home on Apple iTunes to subscribe and leave a written review of the show. Your doing so will help others find me so they can listen too. Until next time, I pray the Lord will bless your efforts to build a loving home life centered on Him.